Welcome back. I hope you're doing great. As a part of this video, we'll understand different ways of inserting the data into tables. If you recollect, as a part of the data manipulation language, we understood how to insert the data. As a part of the DML, when we inserted the data into a table, we inserted that from a terminal. We provided the values to be inserted in a terminal and we inserted the data into a table. But if I ask you a question, in the project, assuming that you are deployed into a live project, do you think you will start inserting the data on a terminal 3 rows, 4 rows? Not really. Then how do you insert the data in project? We'll look at the different ways of inserting the data into a table. The first and foremost way of inserting the data into a table is in a standalone mode. Second way is inserting from files. The third way is we can insert the data into a table from other tables. Let us look at them one by one. We have already seen how to insert the data in a standalone mode. Let us try to understand a bit more. So when we say we are inserting the data in a standalone mode, we are inserting the data into the table either from a terminal or from any other interface. Here we are specifying the values on a terminal. Those values will be inserted into the table. Within standalone, we can consider a couple of options. One of the option is can specify the column names and values to be inserted. Another option is we can only specify the values to be inserted. Let us look at them one by one. In case of where you have to specify the column names and values to be inserted, this is the syntax where we say insert into, will provide the table name and we specify all the columns which are there in a table and we specify the values. Taking an example here, if you see here, we are inserting the data into dancers table and we are specifying the column names. Number is a column name, a name is a column name, age is a column name, and country is a column name. And we are providing which are the values to be inserted into these columns. This is one way. Another way is you need not specify the column names. You just say insert into table and specify the values. As long as you are specifying all the values pertinent to all the columns, it gets inserted. Let us look at the example. Here, if you see insert into dancers, we are saying values and we are providing the values directly. No need to mention the columns. So these are the two different ways you can insert the data in a standalone mode. After inserting the data, we'll see the dancers table would have the data for all the columns. Moving on. Now, the next very important way or mode of inserting the data into a table is from a file. In most of the projects, we have to insert the data from different kinds of files. This is one of the most important use case while inserting the data into a table. We can insert the data by using a command load data local in file. If I ask you a question, whether inserting the data into a table in a standalone mode is same as that of inserting the data from a file, there is a difference. While inserting the data from a file, you got to be more attentive. We have come out of the workflow which you have to follow while inserting the data from a file into a table. Let us look at the steps in a workflow. Whenever you are inserting the data from a file, first and foremost thing what you have to do is get hold of the file from which you want to insert the data into a table. Open that file first. I know this step looks very trivial, but you got to open a file. After opening a file, you have to scan the file. What and all you are scanning? You are scanning different aspects. You are scanning the fields in a file. You are scanning the separators. Okay. You are scanning, is there any new line? So you'll be scanning the file to check what kind of a fields are there, what kind of a separators are there, do we have a new line or not. After scanning the file, you got to identify the data types based on your analysis earlier. After identifying the data types and observing other aspects like separators and new line, considering all those things, we have to create the table. After creating the table, you can load the data from a file into a table. Isn't it awesome? Please follow these steps. Let us look at the syntax here. The syntax to load a data from a file in MySQL is, we'll say load data. This is local in file, means we are loading the data from a local operating system, and this is the name of the file. Here either you can directly give the name of the file, or you can also specify the path in which the file is there, and we are specifying into table name of the table, fields terminated by, as I said, you have to pay attention to this while scanning the file, analyzing the file. So in this case, we are saying comma is a separator, and also we have to specify lines terminated by new line. And this is also one of the important option. Whenever you have a column headings in a file, you got to ignore them because you already created a schema for that, right? Got to ignore them. These are the few options in a syntax to load data from a file into a table. Just extending on the syntax, we are taking an example here. We are saying load data local in file. The name of the file is dancers.txt into table dancers2. This is the name of the table into which we are loading the data. And in this case, we have the fields terminated by comma, and there is a new line. We're ignoring the first row because there are column headings. After running this, dancers2 table populated with the data. One more variation here is, it is not that always you want to load all the fields into the table, right? There may be a situation where you have to load only few columns from a file into the table. That also can be done. All you have to do is more or less the same options. You have to specify the fields you want to load into the table. Then what happens is only those fields which you have specified in the SQL query will be loaded. Other values will be updated as a null. Awesome. We understood how to insert the data from a file. The last option is inserting the data from another table. Why do we really need to do that? We can easily load the data from a file into the table, right? Let us take a scenario here. Assuming that you are in a project. In your project, you have to load a file having some 100 fields and create a table out of it. Now, subsequently for your analysis, you may have to use only some 20 fields from this particular file. In this scenario, what is the best option? You may have two ways here. One way is take this file, only take out the 20 fields which you are interested in, create a table and load that. Or you create a table from these 100 fields and load the data into a table. Always this option is preferred, where we will load the data into a table from one or other tables. This is also one of the important use case. Whenever you are loading the data from a table, you have various options. One of the option here is we can load all the data from one table to another table. In other case, you can only select the important columns which you are interested in from a source table and load that into a target table. Mostly this option is more prevalent in the project. Let us take example here. So in this case, if you see, we have a table called dancers. What we are doing is we have created a one more table called dancers4, and we are choosing some of the records from dancers and loading into the dancers4 based on this condition. So we are loading all the columns from the source table into target table based on a condition. The condition here is salary should be greater than or equal to 50,000. You can see only these two records have qualified those conditions and they are inserted into dancers4. Here we have loaded all the columns. One more use case is we don't want to load all the columns. We just want to load only few columns. In that case, what we can do is we'll say insert into dancers 5. This is the dancers 5. We are saying only load num name, age from dancers. Only we are interested in these three columns to be loaded into the dancer file. So because we are only interested in this is how you load the data by selecting only few columns from a source table and load that into a target table. Awesome. We understood all the three important ways of loading the data into a table. Please do remember these ways. Thank you.